Welcome to the licensing panel on Tuesday the 31st of January. I'll just read through, I hope everyone's turned their phone off, yeah? Okay, I'll just read through the procedure that we're going to go through. We have introductions first, then the licensing officer will present responsible authorities, but we don't have any today. And then the panel will be asking questions, and then the applicant and the representative, I believe we have Mr. Quinnell to speak. And then we have persons making representations to speak. That would be Toby Butler, is that right? And then the panel, we will then be asking questions to the people making representations. And then we will sum up. The applicant and representative will also sum up. And then we will retire to consider the application. And our legal advisor is here to announce the legal advice. And then I will announce the decision. Okay? Okay, so first of all, we have to appoint a chair for the panel hearing.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillors, could I have your nomination for a chair for the panel this morning, please?
I propose Councillor Timpey.
Seconded.
Thank you very much, Councillor Timpey, your chair for this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so minutes of the last meeting on the 6th of September. We need to approve those as a correct record of the proceedings. Do that? Yeah?
Yeah.
All agreed? We have no apologies for absence. Do we have any disclosures of interest on the panel?
Chair, not a disclosure of interest, but just to get it out in the open, I have had lunch at this cafe on one occasion last summer, and that passed without any incident whatsoever. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Mear. Right, so now we have the licensing officer to present. Ruth?
The purpose of this report is to determine the premises licence application made under Section 18 of the Licensing Act 2003 for Tibbs Farm Cafe, Udimore Road, Udimore, TN 316AR. The application was made by an agent on behalf of the applicant, Mr. Wheeler, on the 28th of November 2022, and it was accepted as a valid application on the 7th of December 2022, following receipt of all the relevant documents and payment. The last day for representations was January the 4th, 2023. The location plan, proposed licence area and photographs of the site are in appendices B, C and D of your pack, which starts on page 14. The application was for the sale or supply of alcohol for both on and off sales from 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. Monday through to Sunday. The cafe is in a rural location, set back from the road, and serves approximately 40 covers indoors and 20 outdoors on the veranda and the outdoor seating area. The cafe normally opens 6 days per week from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. and the purpose of the premises licence is to allow for seasonal events and occasional licensing activity outside the current normal trading hours. Appendix A1, starting on page 9 of your report, details the steps Mr. Wheeler intends to take to promote the 4 licensing objectives. In the event of the licence being granted, these will be transferred along with the additional conditions already agreed between the applicant and Sussex Police into conditions that will appear on the licence, unless, of course, conditions are modified by yourselves during the consideration of this representation, following any representations. The conditions submitted by Sussex Police are in Appendix A2 of your pack, and that starts on page 11 of the report. Mr. Wheeler has not applied for regulated entertainment. However, the government has deregulated many aspects of regulated entertainment. Under any premises licence granted, Mr. Wheeler would be able to offer amplified live and recorded music between 8 a.m. and 11 p.m, provided the audience is less than 500 people. The entitlement can only be conditioned, restricted or removed by the panel during the determination of the application or at any later review if that's seen fit. The premises has not held a premises licence previously. However, it did run 4 events in 2022 under temporary event notices for tapas evenings. There's been 1 noise complaint recorded against the premises, and that was in November 2020 during one of the national lockdowns, and this was made by a Hastings resident. The resident didn't pursue the complaint, so the case was closed. There was also 1 COVID non-compliant complaint recorded against the premises by that same Hastings resident in November 2022. The premises was visited by an officer and there were found to be no issues with how they were running during the time. 1 representation was received following the public advertisement of the premises applications from Mr. Butler. This is fully reproduced in Appendix E, starting on page 21 of the report. The representation relates to concerns regarding crime and disorder, public safety and public nuisance. Planning did not make a representation. However, they made comments relating to restricted planning permission on the site, and the specifics of the planning notices were put in page 6 of the report. Planning require us to inform them of the outcome of this application in order that they could pursue any enforcement action that they may deem necessary following issue. Sussex Police withdrew their representation following the applicant's agreement to the additional conditions previously mentioned in Appendix A2 on page 11. In summary, there was 1 representation from a person in the vicinity of the premises objecting to the application, and the applicant has agreed additional conditions with Sussex Police. The Licensing Act 2003 requires the local licensing authority to carry out its function with a view to promoting the 4 licensing objectives. They are the prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, the prevention of public nuisance and the protection of children from harm. In exercising these functions, the licensing authority must have regard to guidance issued by the Secretary of State and its own statement of licensing policy. Under Section 181, Schedule 5, Part 3 of the Licensing Act 2003, rights of appeal exist to the Magistrates' Court against the decision of the licensing authority. Such an appeal can be made on behalf of the applicant, the holder of the premises licence, or any person who's made valid representations in relation to the application. Under Section 18 of the Licensing Act, the following options are available to the General Licensing Panel. To grant the licence subject to the conditions considered, with the operating schedule modified to such extent as considered necessary for the promotion of the licensing objectives. To exclude the scope of the licence, exclude from the scope of the licence any of the licensable activities to which the application relates. To refuse to specify a person in the licence as the designated premises supervisor, or to reject the application. Conditions are modified if any of them are altered or omitted or any new condition is added. The General Licensing Panel will be required to give reasons for their decision. In conclusion, having considered the application, representation and written and oral submissions made, the panel shall determine the application.
Thank you, Ruth. Mark, you had something to say?
Yeah, sorry, Chair. I just noticed one slip of the tongue. I think it was accidental when Mrs. Edson was talking about the music entitlements under the Deregulation of Live Music Act. She mentioned that during this application, but they're not a matter for the panel to consider during this application. They only can be considered, altered or conditioned at a licensing review application hearing.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Rendell. Did you have anything else on the environmental? No? Okay, thank you.
Yes, first question is, what is the distance from the premises in question, the cafe, to the Oasts, the neighbouring property? Do we know how far that is?
I don't unfortunately know how far. I'm not very good with distances and gauging. On one of the photographs in the pack, it's on page 20. I stood in part of the car park and took a photograph. On the left is the cafe. On the right is the bordering trees. There's a 6-foot fence and high leyland eye. And then there's a patio area behind that before the Oast is actually located. So a reasonable distance. I would, as an estimate, as a very vague estimate, the width of the property that you can see there, I'd say it's probably the same distance or more from the bordering hedge to the start of the actual house.
Thank you. And my other question was going to be about one of the proposed conditions at page 10. And it's the B, the prevention of public nuisance. And that reads, noise or vibration will not emanate from the premises, such as to cause persons in the neighbourhood to be unreasonably disturbed. In general terms, noise from the premises should not be audible within any noise-sensitive premises, e.g. a dwelling, with windows open for normal ventilation, and this will be assessed from boundary to the nearest residential properties on all sides. My question there is I don't really understand what that means. I don't know if it's enforceable or measurable. Do you have any comments on that?
The way I determine from that is whether there be potentially speakers outside that could be turned up to an unreasonable volume. When I visited the premises, I spoke to Mr. Wheeler's mother and asked about music playing, and at present it is ambient background music. There's no amplification outside at all. There was no intention of putting any amplifiers outside. If, however, there was a disturbance, the person who was being disturbed would be able to make a complaint through our pollution team, and it could be recorded if it was deemed necessary and action taken that way.
Somebody troubled by a noisy neighbour can make a complaint to environmental health in any event, quite irrespective of licensing, can't they? What bothers me here is that we have something which might conceivably be quite substantial with music, and the application is until 11 at night, and we don't seem to have an objective way of measuring what noise is reasonable or permissible.
So that condition in D, volunteered by the applicant, usually we just see volunteer, we're going to put some signs up, we're going to keep things quiet. So that condition, well, what could be turned into a condition is quite detailed. It would be enforceable. There's a good description there about where it shouldn't be heard from. But the panel, if they're minded to, could make that stricter in their consideration. That's one. And then, of course, they can make a noise complaint if they were affected. Well, I did meant to mention, obviously, if you're thinking about how you're going to condition music, obviously that's not a matter for this panel to consider today.
I seem to think that sometimes I've seen conditions involving decibels, measuring equipment at certain locations and so on. Would any of that be usual?
So today you could condition music from noise from patrons talking and set a decibel level. That'd be quite unusual. But you definitely could, if you felt necessary, condition patron noise, talking, shouting, etc. But a decibel level would be quite unusual for that. But you could consider wording to the such that it wouldn't be audible at the nearest residential premises, for example. That'd be quite easy to enforce.
I'm just sorry, Chair, but we have got the. Well, they could play music in any event, whether they get a licence or not, couldn't they? So I suppose, yeah, okay. Point taken. Thank you.
Councillor Thomas?
Well, I was also concerned about the noise level, and I noticed that it says that, the noise mustn't be such as to harm the hearing, as it were, of people in the immediate vicinity. That, of course, is a very high level of noise, the point at which we're getting damage to hearing. Would the recording give any indication of noise levels or, levels of disturbance, possible disturbance from noise? So if you had CCTV, does that produce simply silent images, or would there be sound associated with it?
I believe the CCTV would be, according to the spec, listed. I can't answer that question, unfortunately. I don't know if Mr. Wheeler would be able to answer about whether it's noise recording or not. From what I understand it would be, generally, CCTV would be pictures only. The level of noise recording would be following complaints, and it'd have to be substantiated for us to get noise recording in to determine. But again, that wouldn't unfortunately be covered in this panel.
Just to add, Councillor, the colleagues in the pollution team have noise monitoring equipment that if a resident made a complaint about loud noise, we could leave that in there overnight and record, and that would give us levels to consider what action was required.
Okay, any more questions? No. Okay. So now we have Mr. Wheeler. If you'd like to give us your case, please. Thank you.
Hello. Accompanying me today is Gary Quinnell, who's chair of the Eden Moor Parish Council and also a close neighbour. So a bit of context of us. We opened the cafe 2.5 years ago. We've been running a soft fruit enterprise for the last 40 years. Farm commodity prices have come under a lot of pressure in recent years. Weather conditions have also been very difficult. So building resilience into our farming business has been essential. Our core farming business consists of a native Romney sheep flock, pick your own soft fruit, and a commercial hop growing enterprise. The addition of the cafe has allowed us also to introduce a laying hen flock, a small pig herd, pick your own pumpkins, pick your own Christmas trees, and a market garden supplying our cafe with vegetables. These enterprises are only viable because of the cafe. The application is for the sale of on and off alcohol sales, as we've noted. Currently, the cafe is open 9 till 4, Tuesday to Sunday. This does vary slightly in summer. The proposed timings of the premises application gives us flexibility and scope to evolve the business as it grows, but we do not intend, as such, to be open on a regular basis, 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. 7 days a week. It's not sustainable for us. Having a premises licence will help to further strengthen the connection between the farming side of the business and the hospitality side. We already grow and rear a good amount of our own produce, sheep meat, pork, fruit, eggs, apples, and vegetables. A genuine farm-to-fork ethos is very much at the heart of what we do at Tibbs, and we feed as much of this through the cafe and farm shop as we can. A premises licence will allow us also to bring the hop enterprise into this fold. Our family have been growing hops for over 300 years with continuity. The industry has seen some very difficult years, and there are only approximately 50 growers left in the entire country. The COVID pandemic has placed further pressure on the industry, and we are very much in a situation now, without painting it at all, where the future of the English hop industry hangs in the balance. A premises licence will be a first step in helping to future-proof our hop enterprise as we look to increasingly engage with the public. Last September, we held a number of guided hop-picking tours. We're planning to do more this year, and in similar vein to vineyard tours, we'd like to be able to offer beer tastings to complement this experience, using contract brewed beer using our hops. In addition, a premises licence will allow us to retail bottled beer for off-sales consumption, which will allow us to showcase the range terroir of the hops we grow in the beer, championing English hops. I, as a family, firmly believe that the need to engage with consumers is paramount to the survival of the English hop industry. Secondly, with an expanding market garden and increasing amount of our own produce being used, we'd like to be able to showcase our produce in a more upmarket, discerning manner than we can through the day-to-day cafe. So, contrary to Mr. Butler's assertions, we submitted temporary event notices and held a number of tapas evenings last year. These events were organised with customers pre-booking and were carried out with weighted food and alcohol sales. My sister and I ran the front of house. My other sister helped our chef prep and plate food, and my parents did the washing up. It's a family effort. The aim was to showcase the range of produce we grow on our farm with a range of small plate dishes. We used as much of our own produce as we could, with some dishes made almost entirely from our own produce on the farm. The sale of alcohol for these events was ancillary to the food, but necessary in order to attract customers to an event of this nature. Also, the sale of alcohol complemented the food we were offering, as we had local ales and wines. The tapas events were sold out and were very well received. A premises licence will therefore enable us to hold more regular evening food events, to include the tapas events, farm feast type events, and also enable us to expand on the hop and beer tasting tours without being restricted to 15 events afforded under a temporary event notice. In addition, supplementary, where we farm, we have a lot of south-facing bank, which is ideal ground for grape growing. So we don't have intention of starting a winery, but being able to retail wine from grapes grown on the farm is another consideration. So, as we said, within our application, we've outlined the steps we'll take to ensure we'll maintain and uphold the 4 licensing objectives. The conditions imposed are the same, I feel, as would be imposed on a higher risk business, and we are restricted to weighted service as well. Our out-of-town location naturally reduces the risk of crime and disorder, as customers are conscious of the need to drive. This became apparent during the tapas evenings. For the purpose of demonstrating the 4 licensing objectives, I've listed the most salient points crime and disorder, again, it's waited service only to people seated. Food is at the heart of what we're offering. We're not a late-night bar. We're not trying to be a pub. We're not trying to be a nightclub. Food is pivotal. We're farmers. We will have CCTV in operation. Public safety, the application clearly outlines the extent of the boundary. This was very much a case in discussing with Sussex Police, being a farm, making sure we restrict the sprawl of the permitted area. So this is important. The prevention of public nuisance. We have very strong support from the vast majority of nearby residents, to include the owner of Tibsoast, which I do have a letter of support. I don't think it's applicable for this. But in addition, the outside seating area of the cafe is eastern facing. The cafe therefore shields the outside seating area from the Tibsoast, which will help noise disturbance considerably. Protection of children from harm. We with Sussex Police, we will have an age verification policy in place. Signage will be displayed. Customers are seated and only weighted service given. Staff will receive induction training. Instant refusal log will be kept. Empty bottles and glasses will be cleared by staff. So we feel the conditions imposed, bear in mind the nature of the business as primarily being a cafe, being restricted to weighted alcohol service, and food being at the heart of our offering, is more than sufficient to maintain, uphold the licensing objectives. In looking at some of Mr. Butler's specific concerns, from the outset, our project has had widespread support. Our first planning application was turned down, and actually our second application was only successful following support from over 250 supporting letters through the planning portal. 0 letters of objection were received. And a large number of these letters were from residents within the village. Since opening the cafe, I would be extremely confident that support for our cafe and this premises licence application, both within the local area and within the village, will have strengthened. I believe that Mr. Butler's concerns for the premises licence are somewhat or mostly relevant to the matter of this application, but I also believe that actually they're in spite. They're made out of spite rather than his genuine concern for his private enjoyment and in maintaining the licensing objectives. Since residing as a tenant at Tibsoast, Mr. Butler has demonstrated to several surrounding neighbours his fairly extremely antisocial behaviour. And this is actually well documented.
Excuse me, Mr. Wheeler. Could you just keep it to the licensing application, please?
So I do not believe that. I believe that we can the conditions we've proposed and been placed upon us by Sussex Police are more than sufficient to maintain the licensing objectives. We're a family business. We've been farming in Udimore for over 70 years. We don't want to cause nuisance to our neighbours. We have excellent relationships with our neighbours. And actually starting the cafe was one of our main aims was to create a community hub for residents. It will help secure the future of our hop growing enterprise. It will enable us to hold evening food events with produce from the farm in in genuine farm-to-fork fashion being at the heart of it. The aim and ambition for our cafe is to complement and create synergy across our business. We're already doing this in a number of ways, as I've hopefully shown. Consent of a premises licence will enable greater integration and resilience for our farming business, whilst also furthering public engagement and access across the wider farm, championing food and drink provenance in a way that actually few other businesses can. If the panel will allow, Mr. Quinnell would have a statement to read as well.
Yes, it's unusual, but I will allow it. But I have a couple of questions for you ahead of time. Before that, you said that you've had these tapas evenings, and your intention is to expand those. Is that correct? Beyond the 15 that would be allowed from temporary. Yeah, and is that the intention? Okay, thank you. Colleagues, do you have any questions?
Chair. Yes, two questions. The first one is, I found my own note to myself, and it may be that Ruth Edson can help on this as well. I made the distance from the cafe to the Oasts building to be approximately 33 metres. Am I in the right sort of area when I say that? About 33 metres. And from the cafe building to the boundary with the Oasts garden, about 11, 12 metres, something like that. Yes. So it just gives us a rough idea where we are. And the other, more of a comment than a question, really. You are aware of the hours which you're permitted to be open under the planning regime, which is a separate regime, admittedly. But you do understand that, and you've read what the officer has said. Thank you.
Councillor Thomas?
But my first question is about the background noise created by your operations. You're a farm, which presumably means you have farm machinery, and pigs and sheep are not quiet animals. Do you have any complaints about the actual operation of the farm itself?
Probably, honestly, on that one, if you don't like living near a sheep, you probably shouldn't live in the countryside.
Yes. My second question is, what sort of music would you regard as appropriate if you're having a tapas evening?
These tapas evenings.
Okay. Any more questions? No. Okay. Can I just ask about the tours? So how many people normally are on your tours?
So we have a tractor and trailer. So because of the disease aspect of growing hops, we can't permit people to actually walk through the hop gardens. So we have a tractor and trailer, and the trailer can hold up to 20 people.
And is it your intention to extend those? Would they be during the day?
These are exclusively during the day. We want to extend them. As I hope I showed, I feel we need to extend them in order to push English hops, because, quite frankly, if we do not, we might not be growing hops much longer.
Yeah, I understand that. My point is, I'm just trying to get at, if you're going to expand the tours, and with the light summer evenings, they will then go on sort of much later than in the day, won't they?
So our hop picking hours go from, we start at 6 a.m. and we usually finish at 6 p.m. So we wouldn't be running tours beyond the hours that the actual picking process is happening.
Okay, thank you. That clears that up. Yes, Mr. Randolph.
Just for information, Chair, wine tours and genuine wine tastings aren't a licensable activity. So Mr. Wheeler could do that tomorrow if he wished, without any consideration of a premises licence.
Now, my question was really about relating to noise.
Yeah, Chair, just to mention whether the applicant's mentioned his intention, the panel must look at what he's applied for, and that is Monday to Sunday, 9 to 2300 hours.
Yeah, no, I'm aware of that. But I am allowed to ask the question. Okay, so Mr. Quinnell, as I said, this is unusual, but please go ahead.
Okay, and thank you very much for allowing me to speak. I'm Gary Quinnell. I live at Nelstone Lodge, which also overlooks Tibbs Farm. I'm opposite on the south side of Tibbs Farm. I've lived there for 29 years, and I'm currently the chair of Udimore Parish Council. The Parish Council held an extraordinary general meeting yesterday, 30th of January 2023, in order to unanimously resolve to empower me to make you, the panel, aware of the Parish Council's full support of the application. I also set up and administer the Udimore Village Notice Board page on Facebook, which is a private group with membership restricted to people who answer the question, what in one short sentence is your connection to Udimore? The Facebook page gained its popularity amongst the villagers, particularly during the pandemic, as it was a great way for everyone to keep connected. And with a village population of 369, as of the 2011 census, we now have over 400 members on that page who are predominantly residents or former residents or local tradesmen that will do work in the village. Last week I ran a poll on the page to see how the village felt prior to the extraordinary meeting, just to see what the feeling was amongst the village. Within a couple of hours, I had 135 votes to 0 in favour of the application, and I hope that sort of shows the sort of support that the village has for this project. Finally, as a neighbour, I fully support the application by Tibbs Farm and Cafe, as it will improve the viability of their business and hopefully keep them going. And I think it will be an improvement to what is already becoming a great asset to the village. And I think it also, as well as improving the asset of the village, it also improves the attractions for Rye, Rother and East Sussex, as you see people coming over or coming along visiting from all over the country. When I first moved here, the Wheelers were very welcoming and they helped me to assimilate into village life. They have farmed for many generations and they like to do things the old way. Their hop gardens and soft fruit fields and orchards backed by the manicured rolling hills grazed by their sheep create a bucolic view that I have enjoyed since moving here. They are pivotal in the village life and they have always been happy to allow use of their land for village purposes, such as last year our Jubilee celebrations, excuse me, which were held at Parsonage Farm, which is their adjoining farm. Our modern village hall and gardens, which the Wheelers were also instrumental in us making happen, wouldn't have been big enough for everyone that attended that event. And so the Udimore had use of that the Parsonage Farm. Unfortunately, we used to have use of a field that was an unofficial village green and cricket field, but the farm has been sold on and that's become more commercialised, and we've lost that public space. So really, that's it. Really. So in conclusion, I'd make here really just to show the support of the parish council, the village as a whole, and also as one of its close neighbours.
Thank you, Mr. Quinnell. Do you have any questions, panel? No. Andrew? Okay. Okay, thank you. We'll now move on to persons making representations, which is Mr. Toby Butler. So over to you.
Good morning. I represent the current, ongoing and future occupants of Tibbs Oast. You would clearly have read my email, which outlines my main concerns in detail. I can repeat that, but obviously it's quite clear I mean, it's probably not. You probably read it quite well and expressed my concerns on there. The main thing is, I'm the only resident who is actually directly close by Tibbs Farm. I don't know if you're aware, but the is that a bit close to the? Sorry, a bit away a bit. Don't move it down. Okay. I don't know if you're aware, but there has been some breaches with this alleged temporary prep area, which is closer than what the councillor and Mia worked out. Because there's a metal building with a refrigerator unit in there, which is actually very noisy, which I have complained directly to Mr. Wheeler about, and nothing's been done since, and completely ignored. This prep area, I know I'm going to... Is it... Is that working?
I believe you shouldn't actually move the...
Oh, okay, I'll put it back, but let's try that one.
Yeah, the microphones are actually set in a place where they're not supposed to be moved.
Shall I sit there, closer to it? I could see an echo all the time. I know it's a separate matter, but it's for planning to be involved in. There is a building on the back of the premises which has been erected since, with fencing around it, hidden around the back, which has got an extractor fan. One of the conditions of the original planning was no hot food or cooking on the premises. Clearly displayed on the Facebook and Instagram pages as they do a cooked breakfast, which I understand there is a griddle in the area, a hot plate where you cook food. That has been going on for a long time. I get the waft of food, burnt food, all the time. The area where I actually seat is actually literally from, say the hedgerow is actually that wall there. I'm actually in the middle here. I've had to move away from the property because of the noise, the washing up, the ongoing noises from people talking. The area, it's very hard to explain if you don't live there. I mean, it's a valley and it's very open. Sound travels far away from actually the property. I can hear cars, doors banging, people shouting, children on top of the bank, peering over, annoying my dogs, which is hence why there's a fence erected. There's been ongoing issues with the farm since I've been there, prior to even being erected. I don't see why they need to have a licence for alcohol. They're primarily a coffee shop selling coffee and cakes and sandwiches and sausage rolls. I can only experience from these, they've had a couple of these tapas evenings, which I understand they did get the temporary licences, but I think there was 7, but I think they only had 4 applied for. Ruth could probably correct me if I'm wrong there. I don't know exactly how many went ahead, but it was advertised as 7, I think.
We did have applications for 4 temporary event notices.
They're actively advertising this alcohol promotion, events, etc., etc. I mean, there could be in the future weddings held on there, up to, technically I think is it 500 guests they can have on there, which is a lot of people. There is noise already, and I've experienced this from the tapas nights, people going around the back. The toilets are actually right at the back of the property too. The door slams. I did mention that to Mr. Wheeler initially when the toilets were erected. I think he did adjust it slightly. I'm not quite sure what he did. And there is a strong chemical smell too. The toilets, alcohol normally involves people who smoke, congregations. People will probably move away from the building from the front to the back. And there's going to be, obviously, the smell of cigarettes, noise. I mean, it's a very quiet area, and you can hear a pin drop in the night. I mean, when you hear something, you're alarmed. I mean, there's always, if you hear something, there's something out there. I mean, it's that quiet. I mean, we don't know. I mean, Mr. Wheeler says he's going to do very small events. I mean, there's no reason why he can't do an event every weekend up to 11 o'clock. I mean, people drink after 11 o'clock. They can't be served any more alcohol, but they can actually buy beers like most people do and then actually keep them and then drink on. So it could end up running into the early hours of the morning. There is a pub, there's two pubs up the road, which are very quiet. Mr. Wheeler actually promotes his customers to go to the pubs. I mean, it's kind of diversifying away from his farming kind of side. I mean, it sounds like it's going to be used as a corporate entertainment, and anybody can come along and rent out, put a marquee up and have a party. I mean, I wish there was actually more neighbours there. I mean, I don't know if anyone on the other side of the valley in Peasmarsh, etc., can hear it. I mean, I've heard parties before until, you know, the early hours. I don't know where it actually was set up, but you can actually hear it down the valley. I mean, the licensing hours from 10 a.m. till 2300 hours. I mean, serving alcohol. I mean, I understand from Mr. Wheeler that his hops are sent to America, not actually in the UK. And again, the application was clearly, you know, set up for primary use as a cafe, and now it's actually trying to be made into a kind of entertainment, kind of country event facility in a small parish village, which is, you know. I mean, additionally, with the CCTV being erected, there's going to be more conditions to actually have more lighting, so there's going to be light pollution. There are some lights there, which the hedgerow is very thin. I mean, most of it is dead. There are gaps through it, so it's not exactly a sound barrier. I mean, you know, someone should, you know, maybe come out and have a look at the hedging on the side of it. I mean, or take readings. I mean, it's not, you know. I mean, I understand the planning applications, the planning enforcement are interested into this, the cooking of the food on the premises, and the additional buildings, and the noise pollution. I mean, that's a separate matter, but obviously I've got to address that with the correct department. I mean, I've put in my statement there too about the deliveries. Most of the deliveries do come from out of the area. They're not actually products grown on the premises. There's deliveries before they leave the gate open, and they actually let the drivers come in. So the gates are not locked, so the drivers can drive in, unload, and they put the items around the back of the premises. So there's continuous noise from vehicles, tower lifts going up and down. And they're large lorries, they're not small lorries. And I can't even actually have the windows open now in the summer because of the noise. I mean, again, and the noise from the bottles. I mean, when they've had their kind of events, there's been noise from bottles being thrown into the bin there. The bin is actually on the far as way as possible, closer to Chibsos than anywhere else. Additionally, summer, the smells. I mean, it's just, I mean, most of it I've put in there, so I mean, you've probably read it anyway, so. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. I have a couple of things to point out to you. Regarding light pollution, the licensing policy is the lighting cannot be controlled when it's been installed to assist with the prevention of crime and disorder. So I just need you to be aware of that. However, flashing or bright lights which cause a nuisance to nearby properties shall not be permitted. So there's possibly an issue there. Regarding the noxious smells that you're concerned about, that again is in the policy, and the premises should be properly ventilated, and noxious smells shall not be permitted to emanate from the premises so as to cause a nuisance to nearby properties. That's part of the licensing policy. So again, there's obviously an issue there for you. You're quite right, the planning is a totally separate issue. We are not here to consider that. And obviously the planning department have their views, which they will follow up if there have been breaches, etc. We are here to consider whether there should be a premises licence for those hours. And that's what we're doing now. So do you have any questions, panel? Councillor Mear?
May I ask something of Ruth Edson first, please? There was the question of whether the Leyland EI hedge would provide any sort of sound barrier. My understanding from the Gardening Club is that hedges do not form sound barriers. Am I right? Am I wrong?
They will offer some sound barrier, but they're not intended to be a full barrier. When I visited the site with a colleague, the trees were tall, looked full on the parts we could see, so it would afford some prevention. So, yes, it could get through.
So some very, very limited benefit on sound.
I wouldn't say they were bare. They were fully across. It did cover the whole area, but yes, it wouldn't be something that you would say, I have got a sound barrier up. It would disperse sound.
Yes, thank you. Could I ask questions of Mr. Butler, please?
Of course.
Yes. Yes, if your complaint is about noise and smell and so on. If this licence were to be granted, bearing in mind that this may already operate as a cafe and it may already play music, how would the granting of a licence make any real difference to those issues that you have?
Granting of a licence would sounds like they're going to do an event, so it'd be more people, more present people in the evenings too. So there'd be noise at night. At the moment, I don't actually hear any music because it's obviously in the cafe area. I didn't even know they had any music, so I could hear voices, but I can't hear any music. So in the evening, it could be all day. They could have an event which could last all day long. So there could be PA speakers amplified. We don't know, do we? I mean.
Yeah, I mean, you're aware of the planning regime is a different one from this, but you are aware there are hours imposed on the use of the cafe and also the nature of the business to be carried on from the premises. There are already planning conditions as to that. You're aware of that?
Yeah, I'm aware of it. I think it's from 8 o'clock, isn't it, I think? And an hour before opening, which is actually, there is noise after and before those set hours too already. And obviously with an event going on, there's going to be a lot more traffic, outside caterers, events, PA, entertainment, setting up and dismantling.
And do you think that those events are more likely to take place with alcohol being served?
I would have thought so. I mean, alcohol does entice people in, and noise is actually made. Voices are made louder, people speak louder, and, yes, I agree. Yeah, I agree on that, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Randolph?
Sorry, Chair. Just wondered if you want to consider asking Mr. Butler. He made comments about an entertainment complex. Obviously, you're only considering licensing the area shown on Appendix C, the cafe and the small outside area.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas?
Simply to ask, following up on Councillor Mear's question, when you had experience of the tapas evenings, to what extent did that aggravate the noise that you experienced? To what extent did it make things worse?
To the extent I actually went out to see what was going on, because I heard cars, doors banging, the toilets, doors banging, and general noise of people smoking outside, etc., etc. So, I mean, I think it went on till about it was past 9 o'clock. So, I mean, then obviously then you've got the hanger-oners, which take their time, walk away, and then get into the cars, because you can't, there's actually, there could have been some local people who walked there, but there's no actually footpaths in the village, so I mean, it's very dark there. Most people would, the car park was full.
Okay, can I just point out, Mr. Butler, your email is historical, obviously, and with noise or any other issues that you do have a procedure that you can follow with our current environmental noise pollution people. And so if there is an issue, whether the licence is granted or not, I would advise that you actually follow that.
Yes,
and
I
put
will.
in an
Yeah.
official complaint.
Let's ask one further question. If all the conditions which have been suggested were observed and any enforcement that was necessary took place, do you think you would then be happy with the operation of the premises? Or do you think that no degree of enforcement would give you the level of peace and quiet which you feel you ought to enjoy?
Well, if certain conditions were applied, they probably would satisfy. Obviously, the hours are very long at the moment. I mean, we could have, as I said before, parties, events going till 2,300 hours past, 7 days a week. There's a possibility of that, but unrealistic probably. But weekends, obviously, and especially in the summer, there's going to be more noise, and people go out more in the summer, enjoy, and stay out later because the evenings obviously are longer and lighter.
Thank you very much, Mr. Butler. I appreciate that. I mean, we are considering, I mean, currently, Mr. Wheeler, is it 5:30 you close your cafe?
In our winter opening hours at the moment are Tuesday to Sunday, 9 till 4.
So this is a...
In the summer, it's our pick your owns open till 6, and so our cafe follows suit.
Okay, so we're looking at a licence that extends those hours considerably, aren't we? And of course, you do have the planning situation, of which you will be in breach. So that will have to be followed up. Okay, so are we ready? Do we have any more? Do you want to speak again to a conclusion statement or anything like that?
I could rebuke some Mr. Butler's comments if that's deemed useful.
No, that's not. It was just any more additional information to provide to us for your case. And we don't have any responsible authorities here, so we won't be having those making any more representations. So, Mr. Butler, do you want to sum up, or do you think you've said everything?
I think I've said everything, yeah.
Yeah, I've been advised that we need to clarify this is your final opportunity to speak. So are you still happy with that, Mr. Butler?
Yes, I'm still happy with that, yeah.
And Mr. Wheeler? You would like to speak. Okay, please go ahead.
We're to emphasise again, we've been in the village a long time. We have excellent relationships with the vast majority of our neighbours. The business we have trying to create with the cafe is very much in tune with wanting to keep our farm viable. I have a brother and two sisters. We're all connected, work in some capacity on the farm. We need to make this cafe project a more viable enterprise and bring it to make it work with the farm. We need the scope to be able to offer an evening event. We need to be able to, in order to showcase the food we can grow, we need and feel it's necessary to be able to offer alcohol.
Sorry, Mr. Wheeler. I was just getting some advice. I wasn't sure whether I could ask you another question. So the evening events, 15 of them in a year, that you don't consider that to be enough with the temporary?
15 events, that covers the breadth of, if we only did 15 evening type events. Going forward, I don't think it would future-proof the business, so we'd be sitting here next year. But also, if we had any other licensable activities, for instance, a afternoon tea with a glass of Prosecco, that would then need to be done under a temporary event notice.
Okay, thank you. And are you concluded now? Do you have anything else to say?
I'm concluded. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Just, I think it's probably giving the opportunity here to the parties just to clarify that they've said everything they want to say, just because with the introduction of further questions, I think it's only right that you give everyone the opportunity, again, the person making representations, and then the applicant, further opportunity just to confirm they've said everything they want to say. Thank you.
I'm sure you all heard that. So, can we just confirm that, Mr. Butler, you have said everything you wish to say?
Yes, I have, yeah.
Mr. Wheeler?
Yes, I have.
Mr. Quinnell?
Can I just make one point?
Chair, it should be the applicant that speaks last. So if Mr. Quinnell wants to say something, the applicant should be given the opportunity to speak as the final say on the matter. So okay. If Mr. Quinnell is going to speak, the applicant should get further opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lund.
Yeah, I just wanted just a couple of points on what Mr. Butler, when he talked about...
Excuse me, this is just summing up. Okay. You cannot refer to Mr. Butler.
All right, I'm finished.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wheeler, again, are we finished?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. So, thank you, everyone. We'll retire now and consider and return. Thank you. To discuss in full. So I'll now read you our decision. This is Rother District Council licensing panel considering the premises Tibbs Farm Cafe, Udimore Road, Udimore, East Sussex, TN 316AR, and it is 31st of January 2023. This is the grant. We have listened carefully to all the submissions, and we are bound to be directed by the principal licensing objectives and material considerations of prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, prevention of public nuisance, and protection of children from harm. On balance, the panel accepts the evidence provided in support of the premises licence application, together with the letter of objection, and has decided to grant the application subject to conditions. In recognising the concerns raised about the specific issues under the licensing objectives, the application is granted subject to the following conditions. The retail sale of alcohol Monday to Sunday, 9 a.m. to 2100 hours on and off the premises. The conditions are the same as in the schedule. There is a couple of changes which I'll read out. Under prevention of public nuisance, no rubbish, including bottles, will be removed or placed in outside areas between 2100 hours and 0800 hours. This is again under prevention of public nuisance. The licensed premises may be open to the public between the hours of 0800 and 2200 on the following days, Monday to Sunday. A copy of the panel's decision will be publicly available to all parties and published on the Council's website. There is a right of appeal. Under the provisions of S181 and Schedule 5 of the Licensing Act 2003, there is a right of appeal against the decision of the Licensing Committee if you are aggrieved at the outcome. This right of appeal extends to the applicant in the case of a refusal or restrictions on the licence or the imposition of conditions to the licence. The right of appeal also extends to persons who have made representations where the licence has been granted or that relevant conditions have not been imposed upon the licence. Full details of all the rights of appeal can be found within Schedule 5 of the Act. Any appeal should be made to the Magistrates' Court, Edward Street, Brighton, within 21 days from the date of notification of the decision. You must contact the Magistrates' Court to establish the formal procedure for the appeal. And that is our decision. Thank you.